ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has called the era of the global coronavirus pandemic an unprecedented time for global cooperation and intra-African solidarity. He was delivering the party's annual January 8th statement virtually.
The fourth priority for 2021 is to work towards a better Africa and a better world. The grave conditions brought about by the coronavirus pandemic have not been faced by us as South Africans alone. The pandemic has disrupted global trade, investment, production, travel, and has also disrupted people's lives. Economies around the world have contracted and millions of jobs have been lost in many countries. Developing countries with few resources available to mount an effective health response have been the hardest hit. At the same time, this has been an unprecedented era of global cooperation and solidarity, especially intra-African solidarity. During our chairship of the African Union, South Africa has been instrumental in forging more effective collaboration amongst African countries in tackling the economic effects of COVID-19. We have worked with other countries to develop effective health responses and ensure that all African countries have access to essential medical supplies and ultimately vaccines. We must continue to build on the cooperation that has been forged under the pandemic to deepen the ties of collaboration between the countries and regions of the world.
Well, to reflect on some of President Ramaphosa's speech in his capacity as ANC President, we're now joined by political analyst Professor Susan Booysens. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Good evening and thank you very much.
All right, so last year was the year of disruption and it continues. I mean, the January 8th statement delivered virtually unprecedented and comes at a very difficult time for the party as well.
Yes, indeed. These are unprecedented times. To think that it's not possible to deliver it in person at a real venue with all the usual masses, that already speaks for itself. And the fact that it unfolds, it's delivered amidst the unfolding humanitarian crises on South Africa's respective borders, that is even more of a confirmation that these are surreal but very real, tragic times. And it was significant that Cyril Ramaphosa referred to the fact that it is cooperation that has been contributing to ensuring that all African countries get access to vaccines. We still have to see how that unfolds. We still have to see to what extent this kind of unitarian impulse can extend to ensuring that there will be medical aid and facilities, not just in South Africa, where we ourselves are coming short at the moment, but also in other neighboring countries, for example, other SADC countries. We know the medical systems of those countries are already overburdened. And so I think the big test for President Ramaphosa's words are going to come in the next few weeks.
So the January 8th statement has traditionally really been, I suppose, the president of the party speaking to the party faithful about the state of the party, and that as external people we listen because what happens within the ANC affects us all. So let's start with as if we're wearing ANC hats and the words that he had for the party faithful. Do you think it was an honest account and said what he needed to say?
Well, I think it's the tale of many different worlds or cities in his words there. On the one hand, it was significant when he spoke to the party faithful that he had the, can I almost say, guts to stand up and say, repeat the words of those ANC Nazaré 2017 resolutions that says, affirms the powers of the Integrity Commission of the ANC, that says that those accused shall stand aside or report to the Integrity Commission and immediately step aside if they fail to explain themselves sufficiently. The fact that there is so much resistance within the ANC itself, among the party faithful in there, against those words, that went unspoken, that if those contradictions and the problems of implementing those words, those remained unclarified in the speech. But I think it is significant, at least, that he could say these words in a statement that is endorsed by the NEC, because the ANC, of course, really recognizes this is another elections year, even if those local elections are only likely to come very late in the year. But it is an election year, and the words really reminded me of what he had said in 2019. And then he had carried the trust and credibility of the ANC into those elections. So it's really a question of whether the ANC will manage to take sufficient action to give recognition to the fact that much has changed in the 2-3 years since, and that the ANC has got much more credibility to prove in the process.
All right, and then when we start focusing externally, we've just heard him talk about greater intra-African cooperation. We saw the African National Congress go to Zimbabwe to try and help them with a local problem. Then COVID-19 also brought a lot of African countries together to try and work together to solve the pandemic. Would you say that it has been a time of intra-African cooperation, and has the ANC played a role in that?
Well, much of this has been playing out behind the scenes, and we have not seen the explicit actions of interstate cooperation, of leaders meeting on COVID. There are restrictions on meetings, but usually much publicity is associated with such events. We have not, if those have indeed happened, I'm sure they did, but we have not heard the details that have not been publicized. So much of what we've got to go on is the word of medical experts who suggest that there have been collaboration and much liaison, even if it's a lower key, perhaps not national presidential between the countries. But going by Cyril Ramaphosa's words this evening, that has indeed been happening and has been significant. He especially focused in his words in the speech on ensuring that the vaccines become available to all countries equitably, and especially to the developing world in relation to the industrialized world. And definitely there has been very good action there. The details of what those actions were, we do not know. But I really believe that is just one instance. Much of the challenges will come in how to administer that and the respective countries' medical systems' abilities to roll that out. We know in South Africa there are many initiatives unfolding, much planning in these exact weeks as to how to bring that into effect. And we can only assume that much assistance, if South Africa is indeed able to render that kind of assistance, will be needed within the African Union in the months to come.
All right. We don't hear much about it, but I know that there are party-to-party engagements that do take place with political parties. We've seen, particularly with former liberation movements, particularly within the region, where they often come together and discuss issues. Do you think that the ANC in the past year has done much work in terms of party-to-party work across borders?
Well, I think those, by nature of the period of the COVID times in which we live, those have been limited. But I believe they have been continuous interaction, even if electronically or virtually, between party leaders. They put great premium on the meetings they have, for example, with Free in Mozambique and those fraternal relationships that exist there. So I can only imagine that they would have continued bringing home and exchanging ideas as to what may be materializing there. We know, as you mentioned just now, there was the much publicized controversial meeting in Zimbabwe. And from past times, I know that some government to government issues are indeed discussed there. But in general, those meetings have a great former liberation movement, fraternal thrust when they discuss it and how the struggles are unfolding or how the lack of struggle is unfolding. So I do not believe much about the COVID times and combating that would have transpired in the course of this year, but certainly those relations are continuing.
All right. So from day one, the moment that President Ramaphosa became president of the ANC, the message of unity is the one that he's been spreading. And so no surprise, he continues to preach that. And I just wonder how difficult will be the year ahead, given the things that are going on in and around the party. A lot of party figures going to the Commission of Inquiry and state capture, and a lot of arrests that we've seen during the course of the year.
Yes, I think this is really going to be the year of living dangerously in the ANC, because the pressure is really building up to show that there is accountability, that there isn't a free rein to continue with capture and corruption, whatever form manifestations those may take. The pressure is on for the ANC to prove that it is indeed able to renew itself, to put these phenomena behind it. We know that the words may be sincere, but we also know that simultaneously as the president speaks these words, there are many, many members who definitely do not take those seriously. So that internal struggle for the balance between these forces within the ANC, that will continue unabated in the course of the year. Just the fact that the president does stand up and say these words in public, in public forum, important occasion like this, has got importance, means he has got some support in the NEC. If not, this is also an ANC endorsed statement. But then we know that the culprits and the implicated ones, they definitely know that there is scope to evade being accountable, finally seriously accountable. There is scope to evade it, and we know that many of those implicated and seriously implicated ones will in all probability use the court processes and delays and obfuscation and avoidance. They will use all those tricks, there isn't another word, but tricks, to avoid those and to ensure that words like those spoken by Ramaphosa tonight cannot carry much weight as the ANC moves into this very promised to be turbulent year.
Professor Susan Booysens, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for your insights today.
Thank you.
All right, that's Professor Susan Booysens giving us her thoughts about the January 8th statement and what lies ahead for the country's governing party. Now, 109